Hey, Bill, why don't you go ahead and introduce our next guest, because we've got a bicentennial coming up.
We do have, and our next guest will tell us all about it. Our next guest is a very good friend of mine, also my local minister, Dr. Rufus Burton at the First Presbyterian Church of Martinsburg.
Dr. Burton, good morning. Welcome in.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. This is a great opportunity, and I appreciate the honor.
And we have a special occasion coming up this end of this month.
So we do. So in 1825, the Presbyterians in Martinsburg finally got tired of wandering out to Tuscarora for church and convinced the Presbytery of Winchester to charter the church in Martinsburg. And so it's actually one of the first churches chartered after Virginia allowed non-Anglican churches to charter in city limits in Martinsburg. So next Sunday is our 200th anniversary as a congregation downtown.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
How many years have you been there?
I have been there 22 years.
How did you wind up there?
Bill was part of that call committee, actually, and was convincing. When I started out as assistant in a large congregation, and there are two ways forward in ministry. I mean, you just kind of are the adjutant until you're the chief adjutant, or you float your own little boat, and I preferred the Navy way. Yeah. And so came to Martinsburg because it was about the middle of the road Presbyterian church, and I was looking for a place that wanted an ordinary means work, which is a fancy way of saying I was looking to pastor a congregation that wanted to be helped in Bible study and prayer and evangelism and in doing the kinds of things churches do. And so for 22 years, we have been doing precisely that. Been faithful in prayer and worship and evangelism and in outreach downtown, and that's grown in exciting ways over those 20 years, so that we now have a partnership with the Berkeley Medical Center and bi-monthly outreaches with other communities and churches in town. And we do. I'm proud of what the Lord has done at First Church, and it's exciting to be there.
You mentioned the Navy way. Are you a Navy man?
I am not, but you've got to float your own little boat. Going back, my people tend to be Army. It's my aunts who all married Navy men. So
I see. Very good.
Yeah. Now our church is right across from St. Joe's, right across from the library. Refresh me, Rufus, on the history. We've been in that same spot for 200 years.
Well, just 100 years there, or 125 actually. So. Originally, the church was where the old post office is now on King Street, across from the First Baptist Church. Okay. There was a square old Southern Presbyterian building, and at the time, Presbyterians built churches to look like the temple. And so it was a rectangular box with two pillars on either side of the door. And that was... I think the second building, it had a log structure. I think this was the congregation's home for a long while, and then in 1903 bought an apple orchard from the school system when the school system needed money to build a school, and planted then this orchard that's become downtown, the corner of King and Queen, and so they put the church there in 1902. Broke ground in 1902, finished it in 1903, and to some consternation in town, because one of the things you'll notice about Martinsburg is the churches have a particular look. Mm-hmm. It looks like a southern downtown, and that's because a lot of the big public architecture in Martinsburg was done out of Richmond. Well, somehow Dr. Woods convinced the elders of First Church to go to New York for the architect, and so what gets put there is a neo-Romanesque kind of gorgeous building that has, shocker of all shockers, Pennsylvania Red Railroad brick. Right, I mean, so it's this delicate shade of pink that's much less fired than some of the other bricks in town, and it caused quite a stir at the time, and has been our home then for, what's that now, 123 years. 123.
So 200 years, the end of this month, and what do you have planned for recognition and celebration?
So it's going to start a bicentennial year of celebrations. So just last week was our 199th Easter as a congregation, and it will, over the course of the year, there'll be a series of events and parties, lectures and services that will point to God's goodness and grace and His presence here in Martinsburg, and that begins this Sunday at 11 o'clock. I'm really excited. The Reverend Dr. Scott Redd, who is the president of the Reformed Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C., will be preaching, and that's a big thing. RTS, so the Reformed Theological Seminary, is the largest confessional biblically orthodox seminary in the United States, 16th largest and largest residential seminary in the country. And he leads one of the 8, Dr. Redd leads one of the 8 campuses, the campus in D.C., which is the 3rd largest in the system, and is a noted Old Testament scholar. That'll be exciting. And then through the year, it'll just be kind of parties and celebrations as we celebrate the goodness of God to us over 200 years. And that starts with a reception on Sunday, and my wife is part of the planning team for a party at Christmas time, and that promises to be extraordinary as well. And there's a committee meeting for a barbecue this summer that'll be a big deal.
Yeah. So 200 years, do you have track of who in the church has been there the longest?
Oh, goodness. So, yes, and
you don't have to say the name.
You're talking about a minister or the parishioner?
Member of the church.
Okay, or not the minister, and that's sort of
no.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I would give away her age, but yeah, no, we do, and that's So there have been 3 really long-term ministers at First Church, if you count me. Mm-hmm. And so one was there for 40 years, Dr. Woods, for whom our education building is named. Dr. Deal was there for 30 years. And the oldest members of the congregation were baptized by Dr. Deal. So this would have been in the 30s. And remember vaguely the bushy-haired old man, Dr. Woods. Mm-hmm. And then... yeah, and one of the
When was the time of the biggest number in terms of membership for the church?
Oh, in terms of membership, the membership numbers were quite large in the 1950s as folks were coming back from the war. And so,
any idea what the numbers were?
Yeah, at the time it was about 750 members at its peak.
How does that compare to today?
Today we're worshiping about 65, which is about the size we were when we built the building currently, and we're pushing back, growing in a time of expanding ministry capacity, and that's exciting, and we're doing some good work. First Church has had a real history of presence and Bible study and faithful ministry, and we're still at it. So,
in general, where do you find the attitudes toward church and organized religion to be now compared to, say, when you started at the church or even when you were a kid?
Sure. So I grew up in the Midwest, and Appalachia is very different. Indiana is very different than this part of the world, and just in terms of public religion and how folks have their sense of faith. What has happened lately is that COVID has put a strain on things. I mean, COVID shook things, and folks discovered what did or did not shake in their lives. And Lifeway, which is the Southern Baptist research arm, amongst other things, did some research. And what they discovered after COVID was that amongst active Christians, a third fell away in COVID, a third kind of stayed put, and a third advanced. And the other thing they discovered was that folks looking for church now are serious as they start to look. So gone are the kind of social pressures that would lead you to think, I just need to go to a church because I want a better job, or, I want to go to church for a better set of friends, or for kind of social benefit. Mm-hmm. The people who are coming now are actually looking for spiritual growth, spiritual help, contact with Jesus and the truth of the gospel. And so it's an exciting time to do ministry now for all that. One of the intriguing things is that right now in our culture, you're seeing, social currents are swirling. And so you have Christians who will define liberty as the freedom to pursue virtue, which is quite a classic definition of liberty. And that's running up against, we'll call it a revolutionary force that really kind of grows out of the French Enlightenment that sees liberty as freedom from constraint. And freedom from constraint is a very different thing than the pursuit of virtue. Mm-hmm. And so what First Church continues to be about after 200 years is the pursuit of virtue, leaning into God's Word, because it's in His Word that we learn about the Lord, and we learn what He expects of us and the duty He requires of us.
What do you think about the movement between organized traditional churches and religion versus what appears to me to be a growing movement toward non-denominational independent churches, which I'm Catholic, and where I go to church in Frederick, St. John, the Evangelist Church, when I look around, I see a lot of people who are, I'm 62, my age and older, not a lot of people who are 25, 30 years old and younger. When I see the non-denominational churches, I see a much younger membership than I see in traditional. Do you see that movement as well toward non-denominational, less traditional churches? Among the
sure.
youth, among the younger.
That's interesting because, again, the religious sociologists will tell you that that's a mixed bag. In our area, that may be the case. What folks are finding, though, is that younger people are looking for solid connection. And so sometimes a solid grip on the past, so a church or a denomination, a tradition with a deep past and a deep connection to the past, Roman Catholicism, Presbyterianism, Lutheranism, that traditional expressions of these historic faiths and historic confessional faiths, by confessional I mean a coherent and published content of belief, that this is really attractive to people who are just kind of floating. At the same time, in the non-denominational churches, you will find a very attractive, culturally familiar expression of worship that will draw and attract people into the faith. And it have I answered your question? I mean, so there are young people in our pews. There are young people I teach in the seminary. They're quite young ministers in my presbytery, and all of us continue to be focused on the faith of the gospel, our faith in Christ, and what He's drawing us to do. And I think that's part of why we've been here 200 years.
Yeah, Rob basically asked my question, but I've made the same observation that the growth of the non-denominational
you got it right.
church, yeah,
you're good.
Has been very pronounced, but at the expense of the mainline churches. But what you're saying is there is a core, at least what I think I heard you say, there is a core that will be consistent with the mainline churches. And is this cyclical? Do you expect it to kind of reverse it and go back to the mainline churches?
This is a dangerous question to ask a church historian because, I'll go back a ways. It could be. We'll see. I mean, one of the intriguing things that's happening just kind of now as a culture is that The culture thinks it knows the gospel and thinks it has rejected the gospel. But the culture has not rejected the gospel. The culture has rejected kind of the churchianity of the past and not really engaged with the gospel, and that offers intriguing opportunities. Now, that said, one of the interesting things, again, Southern Baptist sociologists will tell us, is that there has, in the last 25 years, been the most profound religious shift in the United States since the Great Awakening. So this was the massive explosion of the churches in the 1740s. And it's from that explosion in the 1740s that leads to the planting of Presbyterian churches down the Shenandoah Valley. And the vast explosion in church membership in the colonies leads to the creation of a national identity, George Whitefield, American Revolution. In the last 25 years, there's been the same size of movement, but out of the churches. They're calling it the Great De-Churching. And that's an interesting phenomenon, and that's something that the church has not encountered, or at least the English-speaking church, since the 1650s. And that got resolved when the English king came back. They restored the monarchy, and then the redcoats brought uniformity to religion in England.
What's the reason for the de-churching in the last 25 years?
They have found several different reasons. Some people just kind of fell away from it. Some folks found it just kind of no longer believable or plausible. Other folks just found the stress and pressures of life too much. And so there are folks who very much look to be invited into the life of a healthy church. And if you're looking for one of those, let me personally invite you to First Church.
200-year celebration coming up.
Yeah, a lot of parties going on.
Yeah.
A lot of parties.
And for others, it just doesn't work as a plausibility structure.
I just read an article this past week. I can't remember if it was the Atlantic, the New York Times, talking about the shift again after COVID of people seeking something, not the online experience, but going to something physically again. And I thought it was really interesting that it took 5 years to sort of regenerate itself, this interest in a faith life, whatever young people call it. I'm spiritual, but not
Religious.
but not religious, and all those things. So I found this article particularly fascinating because I was like, well.
I anecdotally, I would say that that's true. I know attendance at our church looks to me like it's better
It's
than
picking
it's
up.
been since before COVID.
Absolutely.
And the Good Friday masses the last couple of years have been packed.
Good.
Let me go back very quickly to the de-churching. I find this fascinating. I'd not heard it before, so this is new. And you gave 2 or 3 reasons for it, but what you did not mention were the mass media they were experiencing today. And I realize nothing is in isolation.
Sure.
All this is going to be tied together, and everything's going to be a contributor. But the mass media, the fact that so many folks get their services online or through television, as opposed to what they did in the 50s and 60s, and politics has been contributed as well as making it good. Do you see all of these making an approximately equal contribution, or is there some of them that's more pronounced, more influential than others?
Again, a dangerous question to ask to a church historian. I think there are a lot of factors into it, and some of it is that there are a lot of strains on community in the last 50 years. And increasingly, as these things get strained and we get pushed kind of more and more into ourselves, it gets harder to have the bandwidth to do things even like a bowling league, let alone church. And for all kinds of reasons. So, the only, streaming services do away with appointment viewing in television. The movies are having a really hard time getting people to movie theaters to have the same experience at the same time. And, that's basically what church is. I mean, it's an appointment a group of people have together to worship the Lord. And that's just kind of a cultural form that has is fading, or seems to have less plausibility in our day than it has had in previous days. And I even see that in our own ministry at First Church, because as a church, we're singing together, and it's very different to be a producer of human culture than it is to be a consumer of human culture.
On that note, Dr. Rufus Burton, hang on. We'll be back with the final minute right after we do these here. Dr. Rufus Burton, 200 years celebration coming up at the First Presbyterian Church of Martinsburg. What time will Mass begin?
So 11 o'clock is our service on Sunday, and our theme for the year comes from Psalm 90, which I will know best is our God, our help in ages past, the one psalm written by Moses. And so, 11 o'clock on Sunday, the 200th anniversary celebrations will begin.
What's the address of the church?
220 South Queen Street, right at the corner of King and Queen, across from St. Joe's, the library, the courthouse, and the bank downtown.
Very nice. Good information today. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Bill, see you Friday.
Looking forward to it.
We're going to see you in a month.
I'll see you soon.
Dave Ramsey Show is next. This is Talk Radio, WRI Martinsburg and TV 10. We'll talk to you again in 22. Short hour.